There are moments in life when holding on feels noble, like love is proven through endurance, like patience is proof of devotion. We tell ourselves stories about loyalty, about how real love never gives up. And yet, somewhere beneath that script, a quieter truth trembles. Sometimes letting go isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of self-understanding. Letting go is rarely loud. It doesn't always arrive as a dramatic argument or a door slammed shut. More often, it comes softly, like a dimming light, a skipped heartbeat, a conversation that feels emptier than it used to. It's the long pause after "I'm fine," the silence between two people who used to fill every space with laughter. This is a story about that silence. About the psychology of release, attachment, and healing. About how our nervous systems, our childhood patterns, and our unmet needs intertwine in love, and how we can begin to notice when staying connected to someone starts to cost us our peace. Because the truth is, our brains are wired for connection, not closure. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain, lights up when we experience separation the same way it does during physical pain. That's why heartbreak feels like your chest is collapsing. Your nervous system can't yet tell the difference between emotional loss and physical injury. So this isn't a story about forgetting someone. It's about recognizing the signs that your body, your heart, and your mind have been whispering it's time to let go. 1. You keep editing yourself to be loved. It begins subtly. You laugh softer because they once said your laugh was too loud. You stop sharing your dreams because they never ask about them. You learn to read the air before you speak, gauging which version of yourself is safest to bring out today. At first, it seems harmless, just small compromises for peace. But slowly, your authenticity erodes. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-expression, starts to dim under constant social monitoring. You begin to live in performance mode, anticipating reactions instead of experiencing presence. Psychologists call this self-abandonment, a subtle defense mechanism where we prioritize belonging over authenticity. It often stems from early experiences where love was conditional, where being too much or not enough earned withdrawal or shame. So now, as adults, our attachment systems replay that old survival pattern. If I can be perfect, maybe they'll stay. But love that requires shrinking is not love, it's adaptation. And every time you silence a truth to keep someone comfortable, your nervous system learns that honesty equals danger. Over time, this creates emotional dissonance, an invisible exhaustion that no amount of rest can fix. The first quiet sign of letting go is realizing how often you've dimmed your own light just to keep someone else comfortable. Healing begins when you stop editing yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. 2. The conversations have stopped growing. There was a time when you could talk for hours, about dreams, about pain, about what makes the world feel alive. But lately, every conversation feels recycled, shallow, or strained. You talk about the weather, the traffic, the same small disagreements that never change. Psychologically, this is often the moment when emotional reciprocity breaks down. Relationships thrive on curiosity, a form of cognitive empathy that activates when we're genuinely interested in someone's inner world. When that curiosity fades, the brain's mirror neuron system, responsible for empathy and connection, goes quiet too. What's left is routine without resonance. The dopamine rush of novelty is gone, but deeper intimacy hasn't replaced it. You start to feel lonely even when you're together, as if you're talking through glass. In therapy, this stage is called emotional plateauing. It doesn't always mean love has died, it can mean growth is misaligned. One person may be evolving, asking new questions, facing new truths, while the other stays rooted in what's familiar. And that's okay. Sometimes we outgrow the emotional language we once shared. It's not betrayal, it's biology and becoming. The second quiet sign it's time to let go is when your connection stops growing, but you keep watering it out of memory instead of mutuality. 3. You feel more anxious than safe. Love, when it's healthy, regulates the nervous system. Your heart rate steadies. Your breathing deepens. You feel grounded, not because everything is perfect, but because you're emotionally secure. But when a relationship consistently triggers anxiety, your body begins to live in fight, flight, or fawn. You check your phone obsessively, analyzing every text. You replay conversations, searching for what you did wrong. You confuse tension with passion and chaos with chemistry. This is the anxious attachment cycle. When safety feels inconsistent, your amygdala stays hypervigilant. Cortisol floods your bloodstream, and your prefrontal cortex, the logical part, temporarily shuts down. That's why you might find yourself saying, "I know they're not good for me, but I can't stop thinking about them." It's not weakness, it's wiring. The human brain craves closure. Inconsistent affection activates the same reward pathways as gambling. Intermittent reinforcement keeps you hooked. The occasional warmth feels like winning the jackpot, so you chase it, hoping love will become consistent again. But love isn't meant to feel like withdrawal. If being around someone keeps your nervous system on edge, if you confuse instability with intensity, your body might be whispering a truth your heart isn't ready to face. Safety is love's first language. The third quiet sign it's time to let go is when anxiety feels more familiar than peace. 4. You keep hoping they'll become who they once were. Memory is a powerful storyteller. It filters pain and magnifies beauty. So when a relationship begins to crumble, we often cling to nostalgia, the version of them who laughed with us, listened deeply, or made us feel seen. Psychologists call this the intermittent reinforcement illusion. Our brain stores emotionally charged memories more vividly, especially those associated with early dopamine surges. So the mind loops back to the good times, trying to recreate them, even when reality has changed. But people evolve, sometimes in directions we can't follow. Maybe they've grown distant, or you both want different things. Maybe they no longer meet you with curiosity. Yet part of you keeps waiting for the return of the person who once made you feel safe. Here's the truth. Sometimes the version of someone we miss is not who they are, it's who we hoped they'd remain. Clinging to that old image keeps us stuck in psychological time travel, resisting the present moment. The orbitofrontal cortex, responsible for integrating emotion and rational thought, struggles to reconcile this dissonance. They used to love me this way, so why don't they now? But people aren't static memories. Relationships are living systems. They change, or they wither. Letting go begins when you stop waiting for their past self to return, and start accepting who they are now, without the need to rewrite them back into your fantasy. 5. You feel lonelier with them than without them. There's a particular kind of loneliness that lives in togetherness, the kind where your body sits beside someone, but your soul feels invisible. It's the ache of being unseen in the presence of someone who used to know you. Neuroscientists have found that loneliness isn't about physical isolation, but about a lack of meaningful resonance. When our attempts to connect are repeatedly unmet, our anterior cingulate cortex, associated with social pain, activates. In essence, loneliness within a relationship can hurt more than solitude because it disrupts attachment security. You begin to question your worth. You start internalizing their absence as your fault. Maybe if I were more patient, more fun, more forgiving. But the truth is, emotional neglect in relationships often masquerades as subtle indifference, not cruelty. It's the missed eye contact, the half-hearted replies, the way your stories seem to dissolve into air. Sometimes, the body notices before the mind does. You stop reaching out first. You stop sharing small joys because they land in silence. Your laughter grows quieter, and you realize you've been grieving the relationship while still inside it. That realization can break your heart, but it can also free it. The 5th quiet sign it's time to let go is when solitude begins to feel more nourishing than their company. 6. You keep confusing potential with reality. We all fall for potential. It's human. Our brains are wired to imagine possibilities. It's what fuels creativity and empathy. But in relationships, potential can become a trap. You see the glimmers of who they could be, the gentle side that surfaces once in a while, the apology that hints at self-awareness, the dream they talk about but never chase. You tell yourself, they just need time, they're healing, if I love them enough, they'll change. Psychologically, this is called projection bias. We project our own capacity for growth onto others, assuming they'll evolve because we would. But growth can't be outsourced. Change requires self-awareness, accountability, and consistent effort, none of which can be done for someone else. The danger of loving potential is that it turns love into a project. You become a caretaker instead of a partner, mistaking emotional labor for intimacy. You spend more time soothing their chaos than nurturing your own peace. In trauma psychology, this dynamic is called repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to replay familiar pain in hopes of rewriting the ending. Maybe you once had to earn love growing up, so now you chase the same emotional puzzle, believing this time it will resolve differently. But love isn't meant to be a rehabilitation center. It's a space for mutual healing, not unilateral fixing. The sixth quiet sign it's time to let go is when you fall in love with their potential more than their presence. 7. You've stopped recognizing yourself. You used to love music, painting, running at dawn. You used to speak your mind with warmth and conviction. But now, your world has narrowed around them. Your joy depends on their moods. Your sense of self blurs at the edges. This is the psychology of enmeshment, a state where emotional boundaries dissolve. In healthy attachment, two people remain distinct yet connected. But in enmeshment, individuality is mistaken for disloyalty. You start believing that your needs are burdens, that saying no is selfish, that independence means distance. Over time, the self begins to erode. The hippocampus, the part of your brain that helps form memories and identity, starts associating your sense of worth with the relationship state. So, when it falters, you feel like you're disappearing too. That's why breakups can feel like identity crises. You're not just losing them, you're losing the version of yourself that existed around them. But here's what healing looks like. You begin to remember yourself in fragments. The song you used to hum, the hobby you forgot you loved, the calm that returns when you spend time alone. Slowly, your nervous system relearns safety outside of their orbit. The seventh quiet sign it's time to let go is when staying means forgetting who you are, and leaving means remembering. 8. You keep trying to find closure in the same place that broke you. We all crave closure. It's the brain's way of completing unfinished emotional loops. But sometimes, closure doesn't come through conversation, it comes through acceptance. You might replay every argument in your head, looking for the sentence that could have changed everything. You might wait for them to apologize, to acknowledge your pain, to finally understand. But what you're seeking isn't just understanding, it's validation. It's the hope that if they admit they hurt you, the pain will somehow undo itself. Neurologically, this is your anterior insula at work, a region that processes uncertainty. It keeps scanning for missing information, looping endlessly through what-ifs. But closure that depends on another person's awakening keeps you tied to their timeline. True closure is self-generated. It happens when you stop waiting for the explanation that may never come and start trusting your own perception of what happened. You realize, I don't need them to understand for me to heal. That moment, quiet, internal, profound, is the beginning of emotional freedom. The eighth quiet sign it's time to let go is when you realize closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself by deciding to stop reopening the wound. The psychology of holding on. If letting go is so freeing, why does it feel so impossible? Because the human brain resists loss. The limbic system, the emotional core, doesn't understand logic, it understands attachment. It stores love and pain in the same neural circuits. So when you try to let go, your brain perceives it as danger, triggering grief, longing, even withdrawal symptoms similar to addiction. That's why you might find yourself checking their profile, rereading old texts, or dreaming about them long after goodbye. Your brain isn't obsessed, it's adjusting. It's rewiring attachment pathways that once found safety in them. Psychologists refer to this process as neuroplastic healing, the gradual rewiring of emotional memory. Each time you choose not to reach out, you teach your brain that safety exists outside of them. Each time you soothe yourself instead of seeking their validation, you re-establish inner regulation. In this way, letting go isn't one moment. It's 1,000 small decisions to come home to yourself again. The science of grieving love. Grief isn't only for death, it's for all endings. Relationship grief follows the same stages proposed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But in reality, these aren't linear, they're cyclical waves. You might feel accepted one day and longing for it the next. During grief, the brain's default mode network, responsible for self-reflection and daydreaming, becomes hyperactive. That's why your mind drifts back to memories or imagines alternate futures. It's not obsession, it's your brain trying to integrate loss into identity. Here's what's crucial. Grief is not a sign of weakness. It's proof of connection. When you allow yourself to feel sadness fully, the amygdala and hippocampus begin to communicate more coherently, helping emotional processing and memory integration. In other words, feeling your feelings literally rewires your brain toward healing. The mistake many of us make is trying to move on too quickly. But emotional healing is more like rerouting a plant than flipping a switch. The soil of your inner world needs time to stabilize. So let yourself cry. Let yourself miss them. Let yourself be human. Because grief, when honored, transforms into wisdom, the kind that teaches you what love truly is. Not attachment, but expansion. The art of release. Letting go isn't forgetting, it's remembering differently. It's looking back with compassion instead of craving. It's saying, that chapter mattered, but it's no longer my home. In mindfulness-based therapy, release is described as non-attachment. The ability to experience love fully without clinging to its permanence. Neuroscientifically, this corresponds to reduced activation in the brain's posterior cingulate cortex, the area involved in self-referential thinking. In simple terms, you stop taking everything so personally. You start seeing love as something that flows through you, not something you must possess. One practical way to begin is through somatic awareness. Notice how your body feels when you think of them. Is there tightness in your chest? A lump in your throat? Place your hand there. Breathe. Tell that part of you, it's okay to let go. The body remembers what the mind resists. Over time, your internal landscape shifts. The songs that once hurt begin to sound beautiful again. The places you avoided start to feel like your own. You realize that you never lost love, you just outgrew its container. How the mind heals after letting go. Healing isn't about erasing, it's about integrating. When you finally stop chasing the person who left, your brain starts redirecting energy back to self-connection. The prefrontal cortex regains control over emotional regulation. Dopamine stabilizes. Oxytocin, once tied to their presence, begins to rebuild through self-soothing and new connections. Slowly, emotional homeostasis returns. But there's another layer too, what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. Studies show that after significant emotional losses, many people report increased empathy, deeper self-knowledge, and greater purpose. In essence, heartbreak becomes a portal to awakening. You start noticing beauty again, the morning light, the sound of rain, the simple rhythm of your own breath. You realize that peace was never dependent on their love, it was waiting beneath your attachment all along. The nervous system recalibrates to safety. The heart reopens, not to chase, but to receive. And one day, without noticing, you stop checking your phone. You stop rehearsing the story. You feel gratitude where there once was grief. That's not indifference, it's integration. The soul learns balance. To let go is to trust that love doesn't need to be possessed to be real. It's to understand that endings are part of nature's rhythm. Even trees release their leaves, not because they're broken, but because it's time to rest before renewal. In dialectical behavior therapy, this is called radical acceptance. Acknowledging reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. It's not passive surrender, it's emotional intelligence. When you accept that a relationship has run its course, you stop fighting reality and start flowing with it. And in that flow, you rediscover yourself, the parts that dimmed, the dreams that waited, the quiet voice that says, you're allowed to begin again. Because maybe love isn't meant to be permanent, it's meant to be formative. Every connection leaves fingerprints on our psyche, shaping the way we understand tenderness, communication, and boundaries. Some people arrive to teach you joy. Others, resilience. All of them, if you listen, bring you closer to yourself. A gentle reflection. As you read this, maybe someone's face has come to mind. Perhaps you've been holding on, through the silence, the confusion, the ache. Maybe you've tried to rationalize the inconsistency, the distance, the loneliness. This is your gentle reminder, you are not weak for wanting love to work. You are human. Attachment is one of our oldest instincts. But your healing doesn't depend on whether they return, it depends on whether you do. Return to your breath. Return to your body. Return to the version of you that existed before you thought you had to earn love. Letting go isn't rejection, it's reclamation. It's choosing truth over illusion, peace over performance, and growth over nostalgia. And one day, when the memories stop burning and start glowing softly, you'll see what was always true. Letting go was never about losing them. It was about finding you. The psychology of the afterglow. After you've released someone, there comes a subtle phase of renewal, the afterglow. It's when your nervous system begins to trust calm again. At first, it felt strange. You might even mistake peace for boredom, because your body has been conditioned to equate chaos with connection. But slowly, you learn that calm isn't emptiness, it's safety. Your vague nerve, which regulates emotional regulation through breath and heart rate, starts communicating safety signals again. Your digestion improves, your sleep deepens, and your thoughts feel less scattered. You begin to reconnect with small joys. A walk becomes poetry. A cup of coffee becomes a ritual. You start to notice that solitude doesn't echo, it sings. This is where growth hides, in the quiet spaces where you no longer chase validation but savor existence. What letting go really means. Psychologically, letting go isn't about deleting someone from memory. It's about releasing emotional attachment to their validation. It's when your self-worth stops being conditional. Spiritually, it's the shift from attachment to compassion. You can think of them and feel gratitude, even tenderness, without needing them back. That's the maturity of love, when it transcends possession. Emotionally, it's the realization that love's purpose was never permanence, it was transformation. It taught you where you hurt, what you crave, what you fear, and what you deserve. And perhaps the most healing truth of all, you can miss someone deeply and still know they're not meant to stay. The final release. Imagine standing by a river at dusk. The water reflects the fading light, calm and steady. You hold a small paper boat, the memories, the hopes, the version of love that once was. You place it gently on the surface. Watch as it drifts away, not in anger, but in peace. You realize that letting go doesn't mean closing your heart, it means clearing space for what's next. In that moment, your breath deepens. Your chest feels lighter. The world doesn't change, but your relationship to it does. You stop reaching backward and start walking forward, not because you've stopped caring, but because you finally trust yourself to keep going. And maybe that's the quiet miracle of healing. Not that you stop loving, but that you learn to love without losing yourself. So, if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. The ache you feel isn't failure, it's growth. The distance between you and them isn't emptiness, it's space for your soul to breathe. The tears aren't regression, they're released. Letting go doesn't mean you stopped loving them. It means you started loving yourself enough to choose peace over pain. Because one day, when you look back, you'll see that letting go wasn't the end of your story. It was the moment you started living the one that's truly yours.